Welcome to bringing Jesus back into focus. He was very blurry. In the 4th century AD, Emperor Constantine went to war, and he thought that Jesus and the loving God of Jesus helped him win the battle by killing his rival's army. So he was the first recorded person that I know of, anyway, there may be others, but they'd be very rare, who actually killed in the name of Jesus. And of course that was where the corrupt Christian leaders at the time, eventually they caved in. By about 380, I guess, AD, all Christians who were soldiers in the Roman army could still be Christians. All Roman soldiers could go and kill and murder other children and be Christians. So they caved into Constantine and the Roman Empire by allowing Christians to become Jewish and Christians. So Jewish Christians can go and kill the enemy, but Christians can't. I'm a Christian. I've never been a Jewish Christian. I never will be. I don't worship Yahweh because Yahweh, there are two Yahwehs in the Jewish religion. As everyone knows, has got half a brain. There's a war god called Yahweh 1, brutal, murdering, genocidal at Jericho, slaughter every man, woman and little child. Then you've got a God of love who says if a foreigner is amongst you, treat them as if they're Jewish and love them as if they're a Jew. Now they're two different gods. Go down to Jericho, the foreigners, kill them, murder them, slaughter every man, woman and child, steal their gold and silver and steal all their land. That's the war god. That's the Roman god of Mars, the Greek war god Ares and the Egyptian war god Sekhmet. Sekhmet breathed fire. That was one of the things Sekhmet did, a brutal war god, killer. Well, what does Yahweh do? Breathes fire, incinerates children. It's the same war god. Okay, the Jews call their war god Yahweh. Okay, fine, no problem. But Romans called their god of peace and love Pax. The Egyptians called their more peaceful god Shu. And the Greeks called their peaceful god Irene. But what did the Jews do? Oh, very cunning, very deceptive. Let's call our other God of love, who we should love others, let's call it by the same name as our brutal, killing, satanic war god, Yahweh. So Satan Yahweh becomes Yahweh love. The two different gods are joined under the one name. You've got one body called Yahweh, two heads. It's a dualistic religion. And as Jesus said, anything that's dualistic is full of darkness. He tried to bring them into the singularity of divine love. They killed him. They murdered him because he was a pacifist. He tried to help them come out of their duality, but they refused. They're still stuck there. My problem was, as a Jewish Christian in the Catholic Church, I left it when I was 16 because they're Jewish and Christian, and I only want to be a Christian, so I couldn't stay with them. Rip out the book of Revelation and burn it. That's the most slanderous book I've ever seen written about Jesus in the world. Cut the Bible in two, put the Jewish religion far away on the shelf, and just look at Jesus' beautiful words, and even then you're going to have a good copy of the Gospels. So I've had to rewrite the Gospels as just a Christian. I've never been influenced by the Jewish religion or poisoned by the Yahweh God or the poison in the Jewish religion. So these are the Gospels of Jesus Unplugged, which I'm reading. That's available around the world now, so you can have a look at it online for free with these videos. I'll get straight into it now to chapter 3 we're up to, I think. Jesus taught we can all experience an inner spiritual awakening if we search for it. He called this the treasure hidden in the field of earth, or flesh. This is our eternal spiritual identity, empowered only by the loving spiritual life force of our loving Creator. Our bodies of flesh are only temporary and empowered by earthly things, and all flesh dies. Only our spiritual body and soul mind of love lives on to come into the presence of our loving Creator to reap as we have sown. Don't forget that. Karma was taught both by Buddha and Jesus. His teachings and spiritual way of love and non-violence can help awaken us all into a new spiritual life here on earth, leading us to the heavenly spiritual world of love after death. Jesus taught we all have two different bodies with us in one, and he said that the spiritual body, being eternal, is the most important to be healthy and well in spirit. He provides us with the spiritual instructions to follow and become at one with, to be awakened and transformed into spiritual children of light of our loving spiritual Creator in heaven. We then help other children to become spiritual and bring peace and heavenly love to earth for all in need. These translations of the Gospels of Jesus remove the Jewish overlays and distortions placed over the universal teachings of Jesus and spiritual way of non-violence and love. Our mortal minds change from being dualistic into singular minds, viewing all things through the eye of love. Jesus said, if your eye is single, you will be filled with light, but if dualistic and divided, you will be filled with darkness. Jesus said not to mix his new spiritual way of understanding our loving Creator with the Old Testament dualistic God of the Jews, or you will lose the understanding of the one true loving spiritual Creator of our spiritual lives, and not realize who you really are as a spiritual children of only love on earth. These Gospels help focus his message of the loving way to reach the heavenly spiritual world from earth after death. Okay, let's move on now to chapter 3. Jesus taught we all have two bodies. Now this is one of the most perverted things that the Jewish Christian churches do. That is to say, they don't teach this. They teach a lie that his dead body of flesh rose from the grave. Jesus never said that. He said the only thing to do with the body of flesh is feed it to the vultures when it's dead. There's nothing in it. It's a spirit that gives life. The flesh profits nothing. So we'll read on now, and this is just Jesus' words, and he simply says this fact. You've got two bodies right now, but only one's going to leave at death. That's the one you want to have healthy and alive and well in spirit, and it can only be empowered by the loving spiritual life force from the heavenly world, so that you are filled with the love and life force of heaven now in your spiritual identity. That becomes your primary identity now, and your physical body merely goes and expresses it while you have time left here to do so. Love your family, love your friends, love your neighbours, etc. Jesus taught we all have two bodies. The following is one of the most important, overlooked and misunderstood teachings of Jesus, where he literally states we all have two very different bodies with us right now that will separate at the time of death. One is an eternal spiritual body empowered only by our loving Creator's spiritual life force, and the other is a temporary earthly body empowered by earthly foods, water, chemicals, minerals and gases that dies, disintegrates and returns to the earth from which it was formed. Our spiritual body and soul leave our body of flesh at the time of death and return to be in the presence of our loving spiritual Creator to reap as we have sown. That last part's very important. The loving Creator and Jesus don't hurt anyone, but we will all undergo whatever it is we've done here. So if you've loved and cared for others, you'll only receive love. If you've murdered and killed and caused great suffering to other children like the warmongers, the satanic warmongers of the world are doing right now, they are going to suffer enormously. But they're going to suffer because they made the suffering themselves while they were here. The loving Creator and Jesus never make anyone suffer. Two in a single bed. Luke 17:33-37. Jesus taught, he who lives an earthly life of only the flesh will lose it. But he who separates himself out from his life of flesh by following my spiritual way and teachings will find his eternal spiritual life. There will be two bodies in a single bed. One is spiritual and one is flesh. The one of spirit will be taken to be near to our loving spiritual Creator. The one of flesh will no longer be of any use and being redundant will be sent forth. There will be two women grinding at a millstone in the same position. One is spiritual, one is flesh. The one of spirit will be taken to be near to our loving spiritual Creator. The one of flesh will no longer be of any use and being redundant will be sent forth. There will be two standing in a field. One is spiritual, one is flesh. The one of spirit will be taken to be near to our loving spiritual Creator. The one of flesh will no longer be of any use and being redundant will be sent forth. The disciples then asked Jesus, where will they be, Lord? Jesus replied, the dead body of flesh will be where the vultures gather. That's all your body's going to be worth when you leave it. There's no life in it anymore, it's finished. It's just your spiritual body that travels on. Be full of love now. This next saying has been deliberately cut out. In all the Jewish Christian Gospels of the world, they deliberately cut out this other saying a long, long time ago, hundreds of years ago. But I've put it back in to the best of my understanding of the way Jesus may have said it. So I'll go through this again. Where will they be, Lord? So one leaves is taken to be near to, and one is sent forth. Jesus says there are two. But in all the Jewish Christian Gospels, if you look at them in the world, there's only one answer. They've cut the other one out deliberately. Anyway, where will they be, Lord? Jesus replied, the dead body of flesh will be where the vultures gather. This next saying has been deliberately cut out. The body of the spirit will be where the eagles fly. Or the body of the Spirit will be with our loving Creator in heaven, if we are ready. Jesus would have said that in one way or another. I could imagine he could have used the eagles one. That sounds pretty much like something he'd say. You know, the body of flesh, I'll feed that to the vultures. And remember, vultures only feed on dead bodies, dead things, death. Vultures feed on dead bodies, right? Now, eagles may have to feed on a dead body if they're starving, but eagles only hunt living prey, things that are alive and full of life. So the body of the Spirit, full of life, will be where the eagles fly. See, linking it to eagles who only prey on living things, your spiritual body is the thing that has to be alive and full of love. And you'll be okay. You'll be all right. Don't worry about death too much. We all have to go through it. But if you're full of love now, you'll be okay. Your spiritual body will be alive and well. And Jesus is saying it right there. Now, in the Thomas Gospel that the Jewish Christians tried to destroy back in the 3rd and 4th centuries because it was too revealing about the corruption in the other Gospels, because the Thomas Gospel can show you where they've altered things. So they wanted to destroy it. Plus, the Thomas Gospel is all about becoming like Jesus. And so it's a really powerful, beautiful instruction. So this is much more in your face. Thomas 61 is really, Jesus here is saying it straight out. Jesus said, 2 will relax on a couch. 1 will die, 1 will live. There it is. That's what he's saying in the others that are in the Matthew, Mark, Luke Gospels. Here he's just saying it straight out in Thomas. You know, they've sort of altered it a bit in the others to soften it out. You know, there aren't 2 different people on the couch. There aren't 2 different people at the millstone. He's saying there are 2 bodies sitting. I'm sitting in this chair, right? It's a bit like saying there are 2 sitting in a chair looking at this computer talking to people on YouTube. There are 2. 1 body will die. 1 body will live. There's 2 bodies in one. I've got a spiritual body and a body of flesh. Beautiful. Okay, let's read on. Sorry. 2 will relax on a couch. 1 will die, 1 will live. If the flesh has come into being because of the Spirit, it is a wonder. However, if Spirit came into being because of the flesh, this is a wonder of wonders. But I am amazed at this, how such great richness of Spirit could be placed in such poverty of the flesh. When you know your true selves, then you will be known, and understand that you are spiritual children of the loving Creator. But if you do not know your spiritual self, then you live in poverty, and your flesh will embody that poverty. That's Thomas. That's so beautiful. I mean, that is really telling it there. That's just so, so powerful, so beautiful. Spirit gives birth to spirit, flesh gives birth to flesh. They can't give birth to each other. They're different materials. The heavenly spiritual world is a different life force, a different dimension. And Jesus says it very clearly here. We've got 2 bodies. And he says, I'm amazed how such a beautiful spiritual body is in this body of flesh. How did that happen? These very important teachings of Jesus can also be seen in one of his most simple and profound sayings. It is the Spirit who gives life. The flesh profits nothing. He is saying we all have 2 bodies in one that separate at death. Jesus wants us to awaken into our true eternal spiritual body of light and love as he did, and become at one with it, while still in our temporary body of flesh. If we do not attain this, he says we will only live in the poverty of our flesh body, which of course dies and rots. Only our spiritual body lives on to reap as we have sown. We must be filled with and live out of the loving spiritual life force from our loving Creator right now that empowers our spiritual life. Our dead flesh is just food for the vultures and does not come back to life as most Jewish Christians wrongly teach. They also distort this very important truth that Jesus gave us by saying there are 2 completely different people in the single bed, at the millstone, in the field and on the couch. They are perverting this wonderful truth of Jesus and must stop teaching that to children. The Gospels have been tampered with, and the saying of Jesus about our body of spirit leaving at death to be with our loving spiritual creator in heaven has been deliberately removed. This was to accommodate the Nicene agenda, falsely teaching that the dead body of Jesus came back to life when in fact he left his dead body of flesh at death in his perfect spiritual body of light, which we all have within us, just as Jesus did. 2 bodies in one. Really powerful and beautiful and accurate and correct and logical and intelligent. It's still totally spiritual. I have to believe I've got a spiritual body. I have to believe it's going to leave at death, but it's only empowered by love. How much love do I have in me? That's the real question to ask everyone. Everyone must ask yourself, how much love is in me? Because that's how much you're going to take. I think the Beatles summed it up on their last song on Abbey Road. And in the end, the love you make is equal to the love you take. Make the inner like the outer, Thomas 22. This is about 2 bodies, this chapter. Jesus saw some babies being nursed and said to his disciples, "These nursing babies are like those who enter the heavenly spiritual world." The disciples said to him, "Then shall we enter the heavenly world as babies?" Jesus said to them, "When you make the 2 into one, when you make the inner like the outer and the outer like the inner, and the upper like the lower, and when you make male and female into a single one, so that the male will not be male and the female will not be female, when you make eyes replacing an eye, a hand replacing a hand, a foot replacing a foot, and an image replacing an image, then you will enter the heavenly spiritual world." Now, in simple terms, it's like this. I give the analogy, we're all like water in a vase. No matter what shape the vase, your vase is, your earthly body's the vase, made of clay. When you pour liquid water into the vase, it fits the shape of that vase perfectly. It's the same form, but it's liquid. Tall, skinny, round, square. The liquid takes the form of the vase of clay. Your spiritual body has taken the form of your human biological body of earth perfectly. Whether it's a little baby or adult, old, male, female, it doesn't matter. That's all biological differences. You've got 2 bodies. Jesus is saying when you make your spiritual body and your physical body at one in purpose. When I only want to bring love into this earth world with my life, with what time I have left, then my physical body becomes the secondary body that I use to manifest the love in the material world with what little time I have left, but it's all coming from heaven into my spiritual mind and my spiritual body of love, and I manifest it so the 2 become one. The inner water becomes like the outer clay vase. My physical body can only express what my water expresses, and the expression of your spiritual body has to be love. Otherwise you can't get into heaven, and it's not alive. That's what he's saying. It's beautiful, really beautiful. Author, Jesus is explaining that once their inner spiritual body and soul mind of love come fully alive, and they manifest it through their temporary body of flesh, then both bodies will be as one. Just as the nursing babies are newborns, so also will the disciples be once they are born again into their spiritual bodies. Born again. Spirit gives birth to spirit. Marvel not, you must be born again into your spiritual body. And children who awaken spiritually have bodies like angels and no longer have biological genders. So your spiritual body isn't gender biological based. Female and male, irrelevant. The water in the vase the water is the same in every vase. A male clay vase, a female clay vase, it doesn't matter. The water in the vase is the same. It's water. It's spirit. It's a spiritual body. It's an angelic body. It's perfect. It's beautiful. We've all got one, but is mine alive? Is yours alive? How do I bring it alive? Jesus said, fill it with love. Otherwise you won't get into heaven, because it's a place of only children of love can come there. No one else can come there. They won't get in. They lock themselves out. Beautiful. Jesus gives us what we have yet to realize. Great. Thomas 17, Jesus said, I shall give you what no eye has seen, what no ear has heard, what no hand has touched, and what has never arisen in a mortal mind. Author. Jesus is referring to our spiritual body and soul mind of love which he guides us to find within ourselves once we awaken our spirit to life. We are usually only used to engaging with the material body of temporary flesh, with our physical senses and mortal mind. See, he awakens us to understand we've got another identity. No eye has seen it. You can't see a spiritual body. No ear has heard. I can't hear spiritual angels speak to me, although thoughts come into my head at time which I need guidance, and a thought suddenly comes in. I think, oh, that's a good idea. Then I think, gee, where did that come from? Well, that's the angel whispering a thought into you, just thought thinking. What no hand has touched. Your physical hand can't touch your spiritual body. When Jesus appeared to Mary Magdalene at the tomb, Jesus said, oh, don't try to hold me, Mary. You can't hold me. I'm in a spiritual body now. So you can't grab a spiritual body like with flesh. And what has never arisen in a mortal mind. He's saying like the mortal dualistic brain mind of the biological creature body, human creature body, you can't, that's mortal, it's flesh, it's blood, it's bones, it's brain, it's got two hemispheres. That can't have a spiritual mind. It's got an earthly mind, an earthly brain. But we can bring it into alignment with the other mind, the spiritual mind, the clear light mind of your spiritual body. Then the two become at one. So beautiful. Also, the other bit that I forgot to mention back before that, where the two are grinding at the mill, there will be two men grinding at a millstone. You have to remember when he said that, he was literally saying, in those days when women ground flour in the kitchen, right, they had their own little stone, a woman, and she's grinding away the barley or whatever she's grinding to grind it up to make flour. But it's a small grinding stone. It's not a giant millstone where a couple of women are kicking around or half a dozen women are there at the big millstone, at the big mill. He's talking about the woman who had a little millstone in the kitchen of their home, and she's grinding flour. He's saying there are two there, two women there, two bodies. He's saying there are two bodies doing that. One's the body of the flesh, one's the body of the spirit, working together as one. They separate at death. Two women can't grind on a millstone. Two people can't sleep in a little single bed. It's impossible. A little single bed, two people can't sleep in it. That's why he specifically, and the Greek language, the Greek interlinear, is very specific. It's a single bed, only made for one. But Jesus said there are two bodies. They don't teach this, do they? I share it because it's his words, and that's what he says, and it's the truth. And I believe it. It makes sense to me. Flesh gives birth to flesh. Spirit gives birth to spirit. John 3:38. I love his words. I always have. Jesus said, truly, truly, I say to you, unless one is born again from above, he cannot see the kingdom of the loving spiritual creator. So born again from above, the heavenly spiritual life force flowing into your spiritual body now, and you come alive in spirit, and you become a loving, pacifist child of heaven on earth right now. That's the only way we're going to stop the wars. Don't join in. Nicodemus said to him, how can a man be born again when he is old? Can he enter a second time into his mother's womb and be born? Jesus answered, truly I say to you, unless one is born of water and the Spirit, he cannot enter the kingdom of the loving spiritual creator in the heavenly spiritual world. That which is born of the flesh is flesh, and that which is born of the Spirit is spirit. Do not be amazed that I say you must be born again from above, the heavenly spiritual world and the life force. The wind blows where it wishes, and although you hear the sound of it, you do not know from where it comes and where it is going. So it is with all children who are born of the Spirit. When my family members died, I never saw their spirit leave, because I got eyeballs of flesh. But if I had a spiritual mind and my spiritual eye was open, I would have seen them leave. Nicodemus replied, how can these things happen? Jesus answered, are you a teacher of Israel, but do not know these things? Most assuredly I say to you, we speak of what we know and testify about what we have seen, but you do not accept or believe our witness. If I have told you about earthly things and you do not believe they are true, how will you believe me if I speak about heavenly spiritual things that you cannot see? Thomas 112, Jesus said, woe to the flesh that depends on the soul. Woe to the soul that depends on the flesh. Two bodies. Author. Jesus is trying to tell Nicodemus we all have two very different bodies. One is earthly flesh, which we can see with our earthly eyes. One is spiritual, but we cannot see it with our earthly eyes. As Jesus said to Nicodemus, you do not see spiritual children come or go, just as you cannot see the wind, for they are born into spirit from the heavenly spiritual world above. Jesus clearly states flesh only gives birth to flesh. Spirit only gives birth to spirit. We must all be born again into our eternal spiritual body through receiving the loving spiritual life force from our loving Creator above in heaven. This is the living water that gives our spirits true life, to awaken our spirits to live out of now while here on earth. The Jews had no idea about this truth of our two bodies, of spirit and flesh in one, and could not comprehend what Jesus was explaining. We see this clearly when Nicodemus, who was a Jewish teacher, asked if we have to climb back into our mother's physical body and womb to be reborn. The Jews had no idea about this level of spiritual understanding. Buddha did, Jesus did, but they had no idea. Our earthly bodies are formed from the earthly substances of our earthly mother's bodies of flesh, and are temporary and eventually all die and disintegrate. Our spiritual bodies are formed from the heavenly substances of our spiritual Creator's loving spiritual life force, and they are eternal. They are both very different types of bodies, and they need different types of nourishment to be alive. Jesus said, my words, they are spirit and they are life. Man does not live by bread alone. Spiritual food and earthly food. Thomas 82, Jesus said, when you see a likeness of yourself, you are happy. But when you see your images that came into being before you, and that neither die nor become visible, how much disturbance will that cause in you? This is a very interesting Thomas 82. It's the only reference we have in all the sayings of Jesus where he is apparently saying, this isn't the only life you've had. This isn't the only time you've tried to get to heaven. You've tried before, but didn't quite make it, so you're still stuck here on the wheel of samsara, as the Buddhists would say, or the Hindus. Author. This is the only known reference we have where Jesus seems to be stating that we have had many lives before this one, many different bodies and identities, but we think we have only had this present one. To realize we may have had many previous lives could be disturbing for some Jewish Christians, but it does match the Hindu and Buddhist spiritual teachings, that we travel from life to life until we perfect our spiritual awakening and then enter heaven or nirvana, no longer having to be born again in this material world where everyone will suffer at some time in their life. So this, certainly the Hindu and Buddhist tradition, and Jesus also have the same tradition, there is another world to get to where you won't suffer. That's the crux of it. The Buddhist Hindu tradition says, well, if you're, for example, the warmongers at the moment, satanic children in the world at the moment who are murdering and slaughtering, they worship Satan and death and that sort of thing. They're killers and they worship death and murder. They can't get into heaven, so they have to be born again, have another identity. The trouble is, if they've killed about 80,000 Palestinians, the Jews, well, there's 80,000 deaths. So 80,000 lives before they even get close to having another chance. The Russians have killed 100,000 or 80,000. Again, Putin and the Russian army, another 80,000 lives, born, suffering, death. So either way, they will reap what they sow. Some believe it could happen straight away after death and they'll be in darkness and experience the deaths that they've caused of everybody else and literally experience it, feel it. It's unknown. I don't know. I have no personal revelation about it, but I do believe everyone will absolutely reap what they sow. So all these warmongers who have caused so much horrific murder and suffering and screaming to children and people around the world who are dying and bombed and bullets hitting their bodies and crushed under concrete, the children who caused that, the satanic murderers, the dark shadow figures that are roaming the world now, led by satanic children, they will suffer for what they've done after they die if they don't repent. I believe that 100%. That's why there's no need to kill their bodies. They're going to be screaming after they die. They'll understand then what they've done in the presence of the loving one. So we move on. Spiritual nourishment. John 4:31-34. While still at the well, the disciples returned and were urging him to eat something, but he said to them, "I have nourishment to consume that you are still unaware of." The disciples wondered if someone had already brought him something to eat. Jesus said, "My nourishment comes from performing the spiritual works of my loving spiritual Creator, sustained by her loving spiritual life force within my spiritual body." Author: all spiritual bodies are sustained only by our spiritual Creator's loving life force, which wells up inside us like a fountain of living spiritual water, as Jesus taught. All our spiritual bodies are born from above in the heavenly spiritual world and placed in our bodies of flesh at conception. Once born again into our true spiritual identity of love, we become spiritual children of our loving spiritual Creator in heaven on earth and can never harm anyone. Our body of flesh is sustained only by earthly foods, water, chemicals, minerals and gases to have temporary life, and is dualistic in its mind's view. You can love and hate when you're in a physical body. Our spiritual body and mind are singular in their view. As Jesus said, if your eye or mind is single in love, your whole body will be filled with light. But if your eye or mind is dualistic, you will be filled with darkness. Yahweh is a dualistic God of love and murder. Jesus clearly states that we need our spiritual body and soul mind of love to come alive in order to enter the heavenly spiritual world of our loving spiritual Creator, and this is the most important body we have. The dead body of flesh is just food for the vultures. They are his words, and I agree. It's my spiritual body I've got to worry about totally, and look after my physical body as best I can as well. Just as we need blood to be circulating through our body of flesh for it to have earthly life, likewise we need our spiritual Creator's loving spiritual life force circulating through our spiritual body to have spiritual life. This is the living water Jesus speaks about that we need to receive in order to awaken, activate, empower, and bring our spiritual body and soul mind of love alive. Without it, they will remain present but dormant, like a seed waiting to be watered to sprout, come alive, grow, flower, and bear fruit. We must be born again from heaven above and move into our spirit now while we have the chance. Gain the material world but lose your soul. Matthew 16:26, Jesus said, "For what does it profit a man? What does it profit a man of flesh if he gains the whole material world but injures or destroys his true spiritual body and soul mind of love? Or what earthly material thing can a man exchange for his heavenly spiritual body and soul?" They're different substances. Matthew 10:28. "Do not fear those who can kill your body of flesh, but can do no more to you." Very important. I'm a pacifist Christian because of many things, but because of this line in particular. Do not fear those who can kill your body of flesh, but can do no more to you, but only fear sin. That can destroy your body of flesh and also lead your spiritual body and soul into outer darkness, tormented by being separated from our loving Creator in heaven by your own wrongdoing. It's true to say sin is the only thing you have to fear in your life here. Of course, violence and suffering and pain and injury, we do our best to avoid those things too. But sin's the thing that is the real danger, because you're going to leave your body in your spiritual body and you do not want to sin and murder and kill like all the satanic warmongers. John 6:27, "Do not labour only for earthly foods which perish with your earthly body, but labour for the spiritual nourishment from heaven, the loving spiritual life force which endures within your spiritual body to eternal life. I will give this to you, for I am an awakened spiritual child of our loving spiritual Creator in the heavenly world, and this is my joy to do so." Matthew 19:24, "Assuredly I say to you that it is hard for those who have material riches to enter the heavenly spiritual world. It is easier for a camel to go through the eye of a needle than for a man rich in material wealth, to enter our loving Creator's spiritual world." Mark 12:17, "Give to Caesar the things that are Caesar's, and to our loving Creator the things that are hers." Thomas 27, Jesus said, "If you do not fast from the material world, you will not find the heavenly spiritual world. If you do not keep the spiritual day as a spiritual day, you will not see our loving spiritual Creator." Beautiful. Thomas 67, Jesus said, Those who know everything but lack within, lack everything. If their spiritual body is dead inside them, has no spiritual life of love in it, they lack everything. When their body of flesh dies, they haven't got anything. Thomas 7, Jesus said, if you bring forth what is within you, what you have will save you, your spiritual body of love and mind. If you do not have that within you, what you do not have will be unable to save you. Think of all the murdering satanic warmongers. Terrible. Thomas 108. Jesus said, let the one who finds the world and becomes wealthy renounce the world and become spiritual. Good advice. Thomas 109. Jesus said, the heavens and the earth will roll up in front of you at death. So true. But he who is living on the loving spiritual life force of the living one will not see death nor fear. Again, if you're living out of the loving spiritual life force in your spiritual body of love, you'll pass through the death experience and out of it, but you'll still be alive in your spiritual body that's going to leave anyway. Thomas 110, Jesus said, whoever finds their true spiritual self is worth more than the world. Your spiritual self, your spiritual body, if it comes alive, you're going to be in an eternal, heavenly spiritual world of love with lots of other children who can only love. No locks on doors, no threats, no evil, no harm. It's a harmless world. You won't want to come back here. Author, Jesus was always teaching not to place your hope in the material world or your temporary body of flesh. He gave spiritual instructions to help us all become at one with our primary spiritual eternal body, which he knew was vital to be alive and filled with love. If we have it, we will be saved. Then we can enter the heavenly spiritual world after our death experience and not fall into the trap of only being a body of flesh that dies. We may be very successful and full of knowledge about the material world and worldly life, but if we lack spiritual love within our souls and spirits, we lack the most important thing of all and are actually empty. So we must treat every day of our life here on earth as another day to practice being spiritual in all we do. Bodies like angels, or like this one, Mark 12, 24, 27. Jesus said, the children of this earthly material world marry and are given in marriage in bodies of flesh. But those who are ready to arise from their dead body of flesh and live in spirit will enter the heavenly spiritual world where marriage is no longer necessary. For they will have spiritual bodies like angels, having become spiritual children of our loving spiritual Creator, and cannot experience death anymore. For our loving spiritual Creator is not a creator of dead bodies of flesh, but of spiritual bodies that are eternal. Beautiful. Something to look forward to. Author, although we may not be able to see our spiritual bodies with our eyes of the flesh, Jesus tells us they will be like the perfect, beautiful bodies of angels in heaven. They will be our perfect spiritual bodies, not bodies of flesh, as many Jewish Christians wrongly teach. Don't listen to them. Listen to Jesus' words instead. Our loving spiritual Creator is only love. Our body of flesh and body of spirit must become at one with love. The two become one. He says it a number of times. He's saying, make your spiritual body your primary identity as quickly as you can. When you're young, hopefully, teenager, young adult, middle-aged adult, even if you're elderly, make it your primary body. It's singular. You can't hurt anyone, certainly not deliberately. So it's a really important message. He's a spiritual teacher about spiritual things, about your spiritual life, about your spiritual body and how it leaves your body, your physical body of flesh at death, and it goes somewhere. Where it goes depends on what you do here, to hell or to heaven. Hell is a place of burning realizations, reaping what you sowed. All the children that have been, their legs have been blown off by these bombs, by these murdering satanic armies. And they're all the same. They've all got S written on their forehead, all the satanic armies. Russian, Jews, Hamas, Iran, Ukraine, they're all satanic. As far as I'm concerned, yep, they're Satan's children. They worship death and murder. That's it, yep. They're going to hell. I can't stop it. I wish I could. I can only warn them. You're going to hell. Don't go there. Put the gun down. So the trouble is they don't realise that they can experience what the other child they murdered experienced. They don't realise that. See, they don't know anything about spirituality. They don't believe really in anything like heaven or hell. They might say they do, but it's all just rubbish. They're just satanic children, beasts of the flesh. So Jesus said you got two bodies. Be really, really careful. Keep your spiritual body clean and filled with love. Don't worry about someone who can kill your body of flesh. It's going to die anyway. Your spiritual body's going to leave it at some point. Disease, old age, accident, someone shoots you in a war. Doesn't matter how it dies. What matters is, are you ready to leave? He says it over and over and over. Be ready to leave in your spiritual body of love and non-violence. And you will enter another dimension, a spiritual world, in a beautiful body that we don't even know we've got at the moment. That is to say, I know we've got it, but I can't see it. I can't experience it by itself because it's the water in the vase. I'm still stuck in the vase. But once this vase is smashed, the water will spill out and evaporate and disappear. My spirit will leave. It's a lovely analogy there. Okay then, there you go. As always, love your way to heaven or hate your way to hell. If you love to kill, that means you love to go to hell. Okay, don't do that. If you love others, then you're loving your way to heaven. Yes, do that. And I'll see you there, I hope. Love your way to heaven. Next chapter, chapter 4, something else.